Hi there, and welcome to the Back to Basics Introduction webinar. My name is Nick Lamb.
And I'm Michael Mullen.
Today, we're going to be providing an introduction to a really cool framework and concept that Michael and I have been working on for a while, and it's called Back to Basics. Back to Basics is focused on really two pillars of health and well-being and performance. On my end, sleep, and on Michael's end, breath work.
The reason we call breath work or optimizing breathing is because the influence that it has on the system and all of our systems is significant. It can optimize sleep, or it can totally affect sleep negatively, as well as many other aspects of health, which we'll talk about briefly.
And on the other side, talking about sleep obviously can affect our breath work as well as we'll talk about a multitude of aspects of our health, well-being, performance, regardless of what sector you're in. Really, the idea with this and what we've been trying to emphasize is we're really going after the low-hanging fruit, those things that are right there for us to capitalize on that very often we won't really take advantage of in the industry. What we were talking about is that we find practitioners going after complex solutions, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. We want to be thinking higher and trying to go for those complex solutions in certain instances, but sometimes we forget the basics, right? Sometimes we forget those low-hanging fruit of things that can have such a profound impact and really set a wonderful foundation for everything that we're trying to accomplish.
The goal of this brief webinar is just to discuss a few of those components, where we'll delve into it much deeper with our recorded session, as well as the one-day program we'll be hosting later in May.
So firstly, why sleep, right? We know that sleep is important. I created this graphic where I look at sleep as being the ultimate life enhancer. So, we see 4 different categories here: health, performance, cognition, right? And even aesthetics. So no matter what the goal we're talking about, no matter what avenue we're talking about, we're going to see sleep have a profound impact. So in the vein of health, whether we're talking about general lifespan, we're talking about chronic disease risk, we're talking about health span, our actual quality of life. In the performance sector, whether we're talking about strength and power, time to fatigue, our risk for injury, our mental performance to be able to be at our best, going to be influenced by sleep. We talk about cognition, right? Cognitive health long-term, the ability to learn and process new things, our ability to focus, mood, and how we interact with the people that we actually care about, going to be impacted by sleep. And even our aesthetics, right? So body composition, skin, attractiveness, right? So really just painting this picture of just how wide-reaching the impact that sleep really can have.
And quite similar when it comes to breath work. We're talking about optimal respiratory health. And by optimal respiratory health, I'm talking about the ability for the system to have multiple strategies to put into place to overcome some of the compensatory strategies the body has done over time that's created a lot of breathing imbalances. Much like the previous slide, we have 4 different regions here where breath work can have a significant influence. Cognition, in terms of quality and ability to be able to think and process and put things into place throughout the daytime. Overall health, in terms of the chemicals and the metabolism, as well as overall functional ability mechanically. From performance perspective, the ability to be able to work on improving tidal volume, lower oxidative stress, and just general better overall cardiovascular fitness. And from a recovery perspective in particular, our ability to be able to down-regulate our system to put it into a better state where it can recover, sleep, and then optimally move freely with less limitations.
The other thing that really ties in very well with sleep that I don't think gets enough attention in the industry right now is that of circadian health and circadian biology. And really the takeaway with circadian biology and health is to understand that every single cell in your body, every single organ system, every single tissue has a clock, has a relatively 24-hour clock, and has a preferred rhythm of synchronicity that it would like to be on. So if we look at this clock here, very often people hear circadian rhythms and they just think about sleep timing, right? And they think of when I should be going to bed, when I should be going to sleep. And there's certainly a preferred time there. But as we can see here, there are a variety of physiological processes that operate on a rhythm as well, right? And what we find is we need to align as many of these variables and as many variables of our health as possible. And the further that we shy away from that and the idea that timing really does matter, we really see a lot of negative health outcomes and negative performance outcomes as well. So, one of the things that we're going to be talking about a lot in our, webinar that we have virtually and our in-person workshops as well is just how important these circadian rhythms are for timing. And I truly believe this is going to be the next wave of health and wellness and performance, where we're going to have to really understand these rhythms and be able to implement them into our process. Now, this is a concept that's a little bit more foreign to most, right? I think we've all had, or hopefully had, a conversation with our clients about sleep. We may have just asked them some subjective questions of, hey, how do you sleep? How many hours do you actually sleep, right? But we've never really gone and taken a deep dive into the world of actually coaching up sleep. And I would hopefully make the argument that we really should be prioritizing sleep coaching, just like we prioritize coaching anything else in health and wellness and performance, right? So the same ways that we coach up exercise, the same ways that we coach up behavior and nutrition, we should be viewing sleep in a very similar way if we really want to make an impact and take advantage of this amazing lever that we can pull that, like we talked about, influences so many facets of your health and your well-being. So, why should we actually be embracing the sleep coaching approach? First, let's just take a look at how many people are actually struggling with sleep. And obviously this varies in severity, where some people are just, having trouble falling asleep every so often, and some are having real chronic sleep issues where every single night this is a problem. And depending on the statistics, it's anywhere from a third of the population to even up to half of the population that is admitting to, having some type of sleep issue where they're just not getting what we would call optimal. And I would even make the argument that this number could be higher if we loosen the criteria a little bit to those who think that they're sleeping optimally, but really might be missing the boat, where their new baseline or their new norm has been set and they've forgotten what it's like to function at optimal, where they're getting their best sleep and they don't need caffeine to fuel their day. They don't feel like they need a nap midday, right? Their new norm has been set. So I think outside of even just the people who are struggling with sleep or might have a sleep disorder, I think there's even more people that we can really have an impact on. And once we optimize and check this box of sleep, we're going to see impacts across the board where we see, improved energy levels, improved overall health, improved performance, improved ability to focus, among a multitude of other things. The next thing here, when we talk about sleep coaching, I myself have been doing sleep coaching both in person and virtually for about the last 4 to 5 years. And in my experience, what I found is that the vast majority of sleep issues, especially when we talk about ones that are chronic, are behavioral in nature, right? So especially those sleep issues that, people really get stuck in these cycles, it's behavioral in nature. There may have been something that precipitated it at the onset, but why it sticks around is usually behavior. And when we talk about behavior, we talk about coaching. The next thing is, when we go back to those amount of people that are struggling with sleep, there's really not many good options for these people, right? There's not many good practical options. Typically, the only options that are available for people are sleeping pills or sleeping aids, which come with a variety of health risks. Sleeping pills were never really approved to be taken long-term, and people end up taking them for months and years. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of health risks with these sleeping pills, where they're predicting decreased mortality. They're predicting risk for certain diseases, including incidences of a few different cancers. So really, sleeping pills obviously is not the option here, right? And then the other thing that's available for people is sleep hygiene lists, right? The top 10 sleep tips or the top 5 sleep tips. And don't get me wrong, there's certainly some good information on here, but think about this in the context of exercise. Someone comes in to see you and you know that they need to start exercising, and you provide them just a list of 10 exercises, but you don't actually coach them through or show them what to do, right? We would never do that because we would never expect that person to be successful. So same applies for sleep. We can't just give people a list of tips. There's no individuality to that. There's no context to what they actually need to work on. And then, as we talked about, sleep can really influence every goal of health and performance. So we should be looking at it just as important as exercise and nutrition, if not even more important and more foundational, because it sets you up to succeed in those other areas as well.
So what are we trying to accomplish when it comes to breath work or optimal respiratory health? We're trying to be able to create variability in the ability of the systems to adapt and adjust to changes throughout the daytime, physically, internally, as well as externally. In order to optimize health, we want to have optimal gas exchange through our body. This is accomplished through breathwork activities and restoring what we call respiratory variability, or optimal expansion and collapse capabilities of the system. That allows optimal exchange of gases, allows optimal expansion of all the structures internally and externally, which also promotes performance, health, and ideal movement. We want to be able to gain access to the autonomic nervous system. Breathwork is an incredible ability to be able to adjust the nervous system's response to sympathetic overload or stress response, as well as the ability to be able to create a recovery tool for affecting the parasympathetic or the rest and digest system. Throughout our daytimes, in particular during stressful situations like we're all in now, it becomes that much more important that we have tools available to us to be able to optimize our respiratory health. Address the airway obstruction component, that is a big influence on our overall sleep patterns. If we have an airway obstruction, and as Nick alluded to earlier, there's a baseline that we get used to, where if we have limitations in the ability to optimally expand and collapse our system, have our airway be open to be able to allow ease of breathing in and out of our nose, to be able to have our mouth, our throat, and our tongue be in positions that are ideal for optimal airway exchange. That's what is a crucial factor in being able to optimize our sleep quality. We talk about snoring as something that we chuckle about. You know, my uncle or my father has a bad snoring issue. But if this leads to apneic episodes where actually people are stopping breathing, the influence that this has on health and morbidity is significant. So optimizing our respiratory health optimizes our ability to open our airway, as well as be able to sleep quality, not only for the length of time, but also ideally to get to all 4 phases, as well as into the deep REM sleep. In terms of a hierarchy of breathing optimization, at the base, you see there's a recognition section. And by recognition, I talk about people's understanding that there is a breathing imbalance is critical. I'm not talking about it from a pathological perspective where you go to the physician and they give it some diagnosis, but I'm talking about it from a standpoint of poor oxygen exchange, poor CO2 release, recognizing that it has an influence on your attention span, your sleep quality, your movement capabilities, and your performance is significant. And you want to be able to create the recognition that the ability to change it is there, and that we can provide capable solutions for people to be able to create interventions for them to be successful. The next tier is the ability to be able to create the change that you're looking for, as well as take the time to be able to utilize the tools available for it to make the change and be able to apply it ideally in given situations. Not only lying down on the ground doing very focused breath work, but also be able to reproduce it during the daytime in different situations. Reproducibility refers in particular to be able to do it without compensating. Developing tools that are helpful to be able to be successful is critical, but the body will, over the course of time, go back to certain habits and behaviors and routines that it feels natural with. And the ability to be able to reproduce it significantly well over the course of time is what's going to allow someone to be successful. From a behavior perspective, we want to be able to reinforce it. So be able to make changes that we don't use words like feel so stressed, or my life has a lot of stressors in it, or even being able to utilize other thought processes that create a behavior change that allow us to jack up our system. We want to downregulate that and be able to use some of the tools in the lower tier to be able to help affect change in the behaviors that allow you to be successful for better carryover. And then lastly, from a lifestyle perspective, be able to then introduce it to day-to-day living and introduce our lifestyle abilities so that we can utilize ideal breath work during exercise, during performance, during sitting at a desk, or even doing day-to-day tasks.
So similarly, we have a hierarchy in terms of sleep optimization, right? We talked about how important it is to really have a hierarchy system to know where you should be starting with people and then where to build from there. So, like we talked about, those behaviors are the foundation, right? I find in my experience that those behaviors are the underlying drivers time and time again. So, we have to address these as they pertain to sleep first, right? So these are the negative thoughts, perceptions, habits that people have, negative emotions that they might have, especially when they've been struggling with sleep for a long time. You find a lot of these negative perceptions that have really become dramatized and really are affecting their sleep and their overall health in a variety of different ways. So, this makes sense where we have to start with these behaviors, because if I'm asking them to change any of the things up the chain here, and we haven't addressed just how they negatively are viewing the whole situation, we're always going to be coming back to square one. So, we really want to start with those behaviors. The next pillar and next piece up here is the circadian rhythm entrainment. So we talked very briefly about just how important these circadian rhythms are for your sleep, your overall health and your performance. And, the idea with entrainment is really just a fancy way of saying, helping someone understand how these circadian rhythms work, what some of the genetic preferences are with respect to these circadian rhythms, and then what are some of the variables that they can and should be aligning in their life, and how can you help them actually do that? The next thing is stress management, or even stress mitigation might be a better way to put it. And this is using breathwork strategies and things like Michael talks about to really help modulate the autonomic nervous system, right? He talked about how breathwork is really the best way to do that, especially on a second by second basis. So, any of the strategies that help us deal with the, what I call arousal system that works against us in the context of sleep comes into play here. And then lastly is the lifestyle. And, when we talk about sleep, there's a lot of press and a lot of articles and talk about technology and the impact that it has on sleep and all of these things that are lifestyle based. So it usually surprises people that they see lifestyle as being the least important pillar. And it's not to say that it's not important. It's on here for a reason, because it matters. It's just, in my experience, if we don't address the other things first, if people have negative thoughts and perceptions, they don't have an understanding of circadian rhythms and how that actually plays into their sleep and their health, and they have a cranked up autonomic nervous system that's very sympathetic driven, or even too parasympathetic driven, we're not going to get the optimal results with trying to minimize screen time, right? There has to be a hierarchy, and we have to know what to attack first. So obviously in our, further work here, firstly, we have a virtual workshop. Unfortunately, given the landscape being what it is right now, both Michael and I were planning to have a workshop in Rhode Island at the end of May, which unfortunately has been rescheduled. So we've decided to take that same weekend and host a virtual one-day workshop where we're really going to be taking a real deep dive into all of the things that we just briefly introduced you to today. So we'll be covering assessments, we'll be covering interventions. When we talk about this hierarchy that we both just shared, we're obviously going to be taking a deep dive into all the things that play into how you can actually make a difference and make an impact with sleep and breath work. And then once life does restore to somewhat normal, hopefully within a few months here, or through the later part of the year, we will be restarting and having some in-person workshops as well. So there'll be some more information to come there as well, looking at maybe a September workshop and a December workshop possibly as well. So we'll keep you some more information there. But thank you for tuning in and being interested in sleep and breath work. And we hope to see you in future workshops.
Thank you as well for your interest in this very important group of topics, because the influence that it has on overall health is profound. And we hope to be able to lay the groundwork that will allow you to be more successful as a coach, not only for the clients you see, but also for yourself, as well as others that you influence personally. Thank you.